although difficult to obtain, a true focus on the meaning and importance of the Jewish Holocaust in Nazi Germany is vital for our generation. The very fact that the spectacular crimes of mass murder have saturated the popular media through scores of books, films, exhibitions, television documentaries and the like for over half a century since World War II can lead to a desensitization of proper concern on the part of individuals and communities. Ears to hear is a gift not widely possessed. Even in the context of this channel, the continual repetition of the familiar story of mental and physical butchery can introduce a tedium that would rob the Holocaust of its message. Yet exposure of the brutal facts today is made even more necessary by the emergence of anti-Semitism inspired, so-called and self-appointed, historians who deny the magnitude of the anti-Jewish atrocities and who, knowingly or not, are preparing the ground for yet another, but this time, final international pogrom. The truth is that the Nazi Holocaust and its concomitants constitute the pinnacle of civilization's war against the Jews to this time, the only deliberately planned, organized, and executed program to attempt the ultimate final solution to the so-called Jewish problem by the total eradication of every living Jew. A catastrophe so great that it casts its black shadow not only over the 20th century, but back across the landscape of history to the genesis of the nation of the loins of Abraham. There is an understandable tendency to fasten the fundamental blame for World War II on the inequitable post-war peace treaties and to see Hitler's anti-Semitic program as an adjunct to the war by which he hoped to foster European unity via the common enemy technique. But both postulates are quite wrong. The fundamental reason behind both the war and Hitler's anti-Semitism was anti-Semitism. Lucy Davidovich is very close to the truth when she writes, "Never before in modern history had one people made the killing of another the fulfillment of an ideology in whose pursuit means were identical with ends. Racial imperialism and the fanatic plan to destroy the Jews were the dominant passions behind the drive for power." The proof for this assertion is found in Hitler's writings and the way in which he prosecuted the war. In a letter written by Adolf Hitler at the behest of Karl May to Adolf Gemlich, a German army soldier, the letter, written in 1919, was in response to a request for clarification of Hitler's position on the Jewish question. Hitler promoted anti-Semitism as a political movement on a racial basis. Anti-Semitism as a political movement should not and cannot be determined by factors of sentiment, but only by the recognition of the facts. These are the facts. To begin with, Jewry is unqualifiedly a racial association and not a religious association. Its influence will bring about the racial tuberculosis of the people. Hence it follows, anti-Semitism on purely emotional grounds will find its ultimate expression in the form of pogroms. Rational anti-Semitism, however, must lead to a systematic legal opposition and elimination of the special privileges which Jews hold, in contrast to the other aliens living among us. Its final objective must unswervingly be the removal of the Jews altogether. Only a government of national vitality is capable of doing both, and never a government of national impotence. Hitler's writings of Mein Kampf mentioned Jews and anti-Semitism over 510 times in its 720 pages. As the historian A.J.P. Taylor remarked, to judge from Mein Kampf, he was obsessed by anti-Semitism, which occupies most of the book. In Hitler's mind, this obsession took the form of a basic struggle of mankind, the war between Aryans, that is the so-called Caucasians or white race, and the Jews. The mightiest counterpart to the Aryan is represented by the Jew. Hence today I believe that I'm acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I'm fighting for the work of the Lord. How could he ever believe that the killing of the Jews and millions of other people was the work of the Almighty Creator? As viewers of this channel, you should appreciate that Hitler's anti-Semitism was nothing new. It was the age-old hatred of the Jews carried to a new, but enlightened and logical extreme. Hitler endeavored to create the impression that he was a self-made prophet of anti-Semitism, and not a mere retailer of others' ready-made views. but he was unconvincing. The atmosphere of Germany and Austria, where he was educated and began work as an unto successful artist, reeked with anti-Semitic propaganda. He is said to have been confirmed anti-Semitic in 1904, at the age of 15 years. Following service at low rank in the Great War, during which he was decorated, he began dabbling in politics, where his eccentric egotism far outstripped his poor scholastic and analytical capabilities. From around 1920 he became influential in the National Socialist Nazi Party, which progressively became the vehicle for his racist anti-Jewish ideology. Hitler might reasonably be termed a very shrewd crackpot, yet with a theatrical self-confidence he rose to power. The key to his success was unquestionably his ability to forcibly articulate the prejudices already smoldering in many Teutonic hearts and create a resounding resonance. Nazi Germany was no more the creation of Adolf Hitler than he was the product of Nazi Germany. They encouraged his political intrepidity, he gave them the courage of their convictions. They chose the leader they deserved. From where came the prejudices? From centuries of Roman Catholic malevolence towards the Jews, only barely reduced in intensity as a result of the Reformation and Enlightenment. Lucy Davidovich states. Not that German anti-Semitism was new. It drew part of its sustenance from Christian anti-Semitism, whose foundation had been laid by the Catholic Church, and upon which Luther built a line of anti-Semitic descent. From Martin Luther to Adolf Hitler is easy to draw. Both Luther and Hitler were obsessed by a demonologized universe inhabited by Jews. No, Christian, wrote Luther, that next to the devil, thou hast no enemy more cruel, more venomous and violent than a true Jew. Hitler himself asserted that the later Luther, that is, the violently anti-Semitic Luther, was the genuine Luther. Luther's protective authority was invoked by the Nazis when they came to power, and his anti-Semitic writings enjoyed a revival of popularity. But Charles Darwin gave Hitler a scientific justification for anti-Semitism that Luther lacked: the doctrine of racial improvement by extermination of the unfit and the survival of the fittest. When these ideas joined in wedlock with papal and Protestant bigotry, there was born the nightmarish deformity of the Nazi Holocaust. Here was the end product of human rationalism and ingenuity, operating in defiance of the simple word of God. Men became sadistic blood-glutted monsters, in comparison to which the fiercest beasts of prey looked like lambs. Hitler stuck to his explicit policy from beginning to end, beginning with systematic legal opposition and finishing with removal of the Jews altogether. His war effort and everything else were made subservient to his destruction of the Jew. If German finance and business were severely impaired by boycotts and closures of Jewish enterprises, then it could not be helped. No matter that brilliant Jewish scientists like Einstein were pushed out into the American camp, or that enormous effort and badly needed resources were diverted from the war to build and staff extermination camps, to wage war on civilian ghettos and transport millions of victims across Europe. Every territorial acquisition, by annexation or war, had to be followed by the time-consuming detection and collection of all Jews, and their removal for extermination. In Hitler's view, the Jews had to be destroyed. As the war entered its final stages, after the Allied landings in Normandy in June 1944, and the opening up of the Western Front, the Holocaust was increased in intensity. Between the 15th of May and the 8th of July, over 430,000 went to Auschwitz from Hungary alone. Deportations were hastened before the Allied advances, and then, as the Russian front threatened some death camps, death marches of deportees to other camps began. The transfers and liquidations continued until the last days of the war, in May 1945. When Hitler drew up his last will and testament on the 28th or 29th of April, he blamed the war on the ruling political clique in England. Wanted war, partly for commercial reasons, partly because it was influenced by propaganda put out by the international Jewry. His final words were, "Above all, I enjoin the government of the nation and the people to uphold the racial laws to the limit and to resist mercilessly the poisoner of all nations, international Jewry." Even Hitler's hatred for the Bolsheviks stemmed in parts from his knowledge of their links with socialist-minded Jews. His crusade against Bolshevism must also be seen in the light of his hope that the Western allies might be induced to do a deal with him to thwart Stalin's ambitions in Europe. The chief motivating force, therefore, of the Third Reich was the destruction of Jews and the glorification of the German Aryan civilization. This was the underlying justification for Germany's totalitarian political style from the 1930s to the 1940s, and for her forceful annexations and wars of aggression. 5 million other civilians were also consumed by the Nazi terror machine, including, but not limited to, gypsies, Poles, lunatics, and sodomites to name a few. Many groups representing most of the European nationalities were slaughtered for various reasons, but the Jews alone were marked out for complete annihilation, and Hitler managed in a few short years to eliminate at least 6 million of them. In one particular point Hitler happened on the truth. The Jews are the national representatives of one party in a two-sided contest in the world, and the Jews will ultimately triumph, but not as they are currently constituted, but as Jews who will have been reconciled to their God and Creator through their Messiah. The struggle in which they are involved is not for mankind's extermination, but for mankind's release from enslavement to sin and death. More will be said about this later. Nazi Germany, however, could never have slaughtered the Jews to the extent that it did without the cooperation, active and passive, of the world at large. In occupied countries such as Catholic Poland, some cheered their conquerors as they carried off the Jews to death. In others, like Britain, the government pretended not to see. In all but a few countries they begrudged shelter to the incredulous Jewish refugees. The Holocaust was, and still is, the global scandal of all history. Let men beware of their attitudes toward it. For the God of the Bible, the creator of all things, has not forgotten. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to get notifications of new videos. Like, share and comment below.